A guy who loves to talk fantasy baseball.
3-2.
This is Full Count Fantasy Baseball.
In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened.
Here is your improbable host, Dean Millard.
Presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. Get in the game where you own the game.
Hello there and welcome to another episode of Full Count Fantasy Baseball presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports here on the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. Apologize for the delay. Usually we like to get this show live at noon Eastern, a little bit behind today due to some technical aspects, but we're here. We're excited about this show and excited about talking fantasy baseball with you. Now, we always talk about the early game. And, we like to showcase what happens and talk about the game that's coming up, but obviously that game is over now. But we can tell you that in the earliest game today, the Orioles are now on a streak. 13-1. The O's pound the Halos. The Angels, after losing with Shohei on the hill last night and snapping that lengthy losing streak from the Orioles, we can tell you now that Baltimore is a winner today, 13-1 in that early game. Wow. Ongoing right now, the Reds and the Brewers wrapping things up. Cincinnati en route. Looks like they're going to have another victory in the pocket, and the White Sox pounding the Jays. It was not pretty. You could see the box score there. A couple of 3 spots put up by the White Sox. So, the Jays pitching is just getting absolutely lit up this year. Hyun-Jin Ryu today, just 3 2/3 innings, 7 earned runs. And Brad Hand is on the hill. Don't even get me started on Brad Hand. He has been an absolute disaster. So anyway, going back to the question that we always like to ask to start the show off.
This is a serious message. Peace and love. Peace and love.
So last night you had the best story in baseball versus the worst story in baseball. Yeah, at the time. Now the Orioles, they're the mighty, mighty Orioles with a 2-game winning streak. But yeah, the best versus the worst, and the best story lost last night. It's not often that happens. The Orioles beat the Angels in a game Shohei Ohtani started. The question today is, and don't base it on what happened with the Angels today, but will the Angels be a playoff team next year? Ohtani, Trout, the list goes on. They've brought in the manager. They have brought in talented players. They do have some talented players. They have some good young players. Can they get it all together? Will we see the Angels in the postseason next year? Chime in if you want to. We'll tell you how in just a second, but I want to say a big thank you to Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. They are the presenting sponsor. It's the most realistic, it's the highest stakes fantasy platform out there. We are doing some incredible things, and we are mimicking the exact sports. For instance, in football, you got to draft a 53-man roster. That just happened. 32 teams drafting 53-man rosters, offensive linemen, special teams. Baseball, we're going to have, of course, all positions, not just outfielders. You got to play left, center, or right to play left, center, or right, just like you got to play shortstop to play shortstop. Vlad Guerrero's not playing shortstop. He's going to probably play first base or DH. We have everything almost down to the minute detail of Major League Baseball. We'll have the rule book very soon. Fantasy franchise auctions in November for baseball, coming up in September at the end of this, soon to be the end of our next month, September. We will have basketball auctions. We're going to have American Football Legends, because you never stop playing in this league. We're going to have a Legends League where retired players can get in on the action. And the cool thing is the players actually get paid for their fantasy performances. Check it out, www.uffsports.com. That is how you get all the information, and you can own the game. All right, this is what we have coming up for you on this show. This is what we run with on a weekly basis. We'll get to our headlines, the top stories of the week when it comes to fantasy. How do you spell relief in fantasy baseball? Baseball Thunderdome is going to pit a couple of closers against each other. Waiver wire wins, self-explanatory. Who do you pick up from the waiver wire to help you win? Prospect Peak is a look into the future. And Rule Your League is something where I'm going to give you suggestions about making your league better, or possibly just a rule to live by when it comes to being a fantasy GM or a fantasy owner. And here's how you can get in touch with me.
You talking to me? You talking to me? You talking to me? Well, then who the hell else are you talking? You talking to me? Well, I'm the only one here.
Indeed, at Duck Millard on Twitter. You can reach Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball on Twitter at UFLB_UFF Sports. Email the show, fullcountfantasybaseball@gmail.com, or give UFSN a shout, UFSN@UFFsports.com. And there's the websites to check out, fullcountfantasybaseball.ca and www.uffsports.com. So much good information out there to pass along your way. All right, let's get to the headlines right now. And we start with that Dodgers-Padres marathon game from last night. Now, listen, I don't ever complain about extra innings. I was tired. I will admit I was a tired man, but I love extra innings, and I love pitchers' duels, and that was indeed a pitchers' duel last night. Blake Snell, who loves facing the Dodgers, Walker Buehler, they went toe-to-toe, and then the bullpens, it took over for 9 more innings after Snell and Buehler left the game. Will Smith tied it in the 8th for the Dodgers. Fantasy owners, you have to love the 20 home runs from Will Smith this year, and it's just the beginning. This guy is going to be, it's not going to be very long where you're talking about Will Smith as the best or one of the best catchers in Major League Baseball when it comes to fantasy. Then in the 15th, the Dodgers put up a pair, only to have, who else? Fernando Tatis Jr. That guy is synonymous with hitting home runs against the Dodgers. He ties it in the bottom of the 15th with a 2-run shot, only to have A.J. Pollock retake the lead in the 16th on a solo shot and Shane Green shutting the door on Hosmer, Tommy Pham, and Adam Frazier in the bottom of the 16th. Wow. It was a wild game. So how is this going to impact your bullpen in fantasy if you have a Dodger or a Padre? The Dodgers used 8 different guys. The Friars went with 9. So if you have a guy like Victor Gonzalez with LA, you're loving it. He did not pitch last night. So you are good to have him in your lineup tonight to pick up some saves or just some relief innings. Every reliever other than Joe Kelly and Daniel Hudson went at least 1 inning as well. So those 2 guys who went only a third each could also be ready to go for tonight. So keep that in mind as you are making your decisions for this evening's season. Here's a guy you just never have to make a decision on. He's just always in your lineup. And with these numbers, it's not hard to figure out why. And we're asking the question, where does Shohei Ohtani's season rank all time? I think this is one of the best sports stories of all time. Where does it, well, it is all time, but certainly right now it's one of the best sports stories. But where does it rank all time? Despite the fact last night he gave up 3 home runs for the first time this season, the Angels starter/masher is having an all-time campaign. The 2 stats that should tell you that are his 40 home runs and his 3.00 ERA. I mean, right then and there. What more do you need to learn other than, okay, this guy is pretty awesome. Oh, he's got 41 home runs. He hit one this morning. So 41 home runs and an ERA of 3.0. The starting pitcher in the Major League Baseball All-Star game this year has 41 home runs. Has anyone ever been able to say that before in Major League Baseball? Or at the very least, is anyone alive who has seen that before? If somehow somebody, if somebody saw Babe Ruth do this, okay, then they could make a comparison. His hitting has slightly dropped until today, but he's still spot on the bump. Last 7 starts, just 11 earned runs, only 4 walks in 168 batters, or less than 3%. He leads Major League Baseball in home runs with 41. Win probability added at 4.6, and he has the second highest slugging percentage at almost 630. Oh yeah, he's also swiped 19 bags as well. So when he grabs one more steal, he will have posted just the 32nd 40 home run, 20 stolen base season while pitching and becoming the first Angel to accomplish 40-20. This is incredible. So he could go 40-20 and however many wins he has. That's the new Triple Crown, the Shohei Triple Crown. His pitching, he's 10th when it comes to strikeout rate, 8th in ERA since July 1st, and his split-fingered fastball is the best they've ever seen in the pitch tracking era. This year, his WAR, wins above replacement, is not only 8, but the next closest player isn't even at 6. And that's a huge gap. You could see the comparisons of some of the most dominant pitchers. But man, this is a historic season. Not just because of what he's doing hitting and pitching, but even his pitching has been just so dominant. It's been fun to see. And it's, like I tweeted out last night, it is must-watch TV when he's in the lineup. But watching him pitch, man, he paints it with heat. It's a lot of fun. Robbie Ray is having some fun with the Jays, and looks like this guy might be turning into the ace. The Bluebirds made a big deal last year, getting Hyun-Jin Ryu in free agency from coming out of the Dodgers, and he got shelled today. They also made a move at the deadline this year. They grabbed Jose Barrios and Brad Hand. He's been getting shelled. But this is the deal that they made in August of 2020 that is really paying off. They grabbed Robbie Ray from the Diamondbacks, and while his numbers weren't great, he pitched in their wild card series, and then they signed him to a 1-year, $8 million deal. They're going to have to pay up next year. If you have him in fantasy and any kind of deal where you can keep him on a contract, or if you only have one keeper, then you're probably not keeping him. But he's a guy who's going to get paid, and this year he's been lights out. A 9-5 mark with a 2.72 earned run average, a whip just over 1, a league-leading 192 strikeouts in just 152 and a third innings. 11 times he struck out 9 or more, and 6 times has reached double digits, including 14 yesterday, doing that for the second time. So Jays fans, man, you're loving this. Anybody who went out and got Robbie Ray because you're a Jays fan in fantasy, paying off for you big time. And he does seem to be the ace of that franchise right now, with other guys that are struggling. And it's always good to have options. And Jays are going into next year with a pretty decent pitching staff once everybody gets together and gets firing. All right, let's talk about Tyler France. Speaking the language of fantasy, the guy the Mariners got for the Padres for Aaron Nola is mashing for the M's, who are making a wild card run, just 2.5 back entering play today. Overall, France has an OPS of over 800, 16 long balls, and almost 60 RBIs. But in his last 6 games, he has 4 dingers, 7 RBIs, including a pair of game-tying home runs in the 9th on back-to-back nights. That's back-to-back jacks from Tyler. He's on 86% of rosters on CBS, but oddly not picked up in my league. I would grab him only if I had a little more free agent money, but I mismanaged my free agent money this year, and I'm out of it. All right, finally, in headlines, we're talking about Dallas Keuchel, and he is crashing for the White Sox. Since the All-Star break, it's all downhill. 7.20 ERA, a 5-4 K to walk ratio, just one quality start since the All-Star break, and a 5.87 ERA. He's also given up 9 home runs since mid-July. And you might have to cut bait on this one, or at the very least bench him until he can get back on track. Talented team, but certainly things are not swinging in Dallas Keuchel's favor in that regard. So crashing as a White Sox and as a GM in fantasy, you have to make those calls and say, this guy just does not have it. Until you see him turn it around, you got to stay away from some of these guys down the stretch, or it could cost you playoff position, it could cost you a playoff spot, it could cost you in the playoffs if you just always go back to the well with some guys. There are some guys where you just are going to wait it out, and they're superstars. And there are some guys where you have to make those tough decisions on for sure. And that's how you win and lose, unfortunately, in fantasy. How do you spell relief? Let's talk about some relievers now. And we're talking about holds. I absolutely love holds as a category. I think every fantasy league should have it. It makes relievers infinitely more valuable. And we're taking a look at the hold leaders in 2021 in Major League Baseball. And Blake Trinan leading the way with 25. So if you get a guy that is top 5 in saves and top 5 in holds, you are absolutely laughing, and you are going to own a lot of the reliever categories because mostly these guys are going to have good peripheral numbers as well. So I did this in my one fantasy league that I'm in with former co-host of this show, Jordan Blundell. I targeted relievers that were going to get holds and saves, not just saves, and turned out pretty good. Tyler Rogers, just the Giants and Dodgers just racing for everything this year, battling for the first in the division, battling for the most holds, and Rogers has one less than Blake Trinan. Genesis Cabrera, the Cardinals, has 23 holds. Luke Jackson of the Braves has 22, and there are 4 players tied at 21. So if you think about it, we talked earlier a little bit about relievers and kind of what the numbers are when it comes to relievers. And when you're looking at holds, so we're looking at the league leaders right now have 25. So that's about 10 shy. I don't want to get into the numbers exactly because that's coming up in a segment. But that's close to about 10 shy of what the saves leaders are. So 9 back is Blake Trinan of the saves leaders. So interesting way to look at it. If you don't have holds, you should get them into your league. And it's a really, really good way, strategy-wise, to try to win some more of those reliever categories. All right, so that is how do you spell relief. We'll get into baseball, Thunderdome, and waiver wire wins when we come back here on Full Count Fantasy Baseball.
This is Full Count Fantasy Baseball.
Say hey, Willie Mays Hayes here. Play like Mays, and I run like Hayes.
Presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports.
Well, you may run like Mays, but you hit like shit.
Get in the game where you own the game.
Every time I see you hit one in the air, you owe me 20 push-ups.
Full Count Fantasy Baseball is part of the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, your one-stop fantasy sports shop. We've got something really cool that we are building here, and fans of fantasy sports are going to love it. If you'd like to join the rotation, if you have a daily, monthly, or weekly show, please reach out. UFSN at uffsports.com, or you can get them on Twitter at UFS Network for more information on how you can own the game. It's a lot of fun. We just added UFAFL Nation to UFSN most recently, taking a look at the Ultimate Fantasy American Football League. This show, Full Count Fantasy Baseball, it's going to transition into something else that is going to closely take a look at Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball, just like UFHL Now and UFAHL Nation do in their various sports. So we'll have an announcement on that coming a little bit later on in the next couple of weeks to a month. But now we have one of the more fun segments that we have on this show.
Welcome to another edition of Thunderdome!
You be cocky and arrogant, even when you're getting beat.
2 men enter, 1 man leaves.
Prediction? Yes, prediction.
And right now, I've got 2 men.
It's serious.
This is indeed serious. I teased it earlier. We're going to be talking about relievers later in the show after we did How Do You Spell Relief? And I talked about how the save leaders in Major League Baseball are about 10 ahead of the hold leaders. So I said, heck with it. We're going to go with the save leaders in Baseball Thunderdome. Who do you like? Liam Hendriks of the Chicago White Sox or Mark Melancon of the San Diego Padres? Melancon pitched last night, as did Kenley Jansen of the Dodgers, so both closers got out of the way. Melancon, and I'm talking about just this year, if you were going into a final matchup and you could take your pick between these two guys, who is it? Is it Liam Hendriks of the Sox? I know we have I think we have the wrong jersey up there. We have the old A's jersey. Or are you going with Mark Melancon? So Melancon has 34 saves in 53 and a third innings. Hendriks, 29 saves in 55 in a third. Hendriks is a strikeout machine, so he's definitely giving you more options, more categories. He's filling out. Now, Melancon also walks a lot more. Hendriks has almost double the strikeouts. His whip is lower. So, although Mark Melancon's ERA is a full point, almost a point and a quarter lower. They've made about the same amount of appearances. It's sort of even. Melancon has the more saves, but not by much. If I'm picking, I'm going Liam Hendriks. He's doubling in strikeouts and a lower whip, although he is sacrificing the ERA. So, but just on the strikeouts alone, I'm going Liam Hendriks. He's not that far off on saves either. So you're only looking at 5 saves back as far as Liam Hendriks. In baseball Thunderdome. But I would love to hear from you what you would do if you were asked to take one of those closers going into the final, the championship final for your fantasy baseball team. Who are you going with? Melancon or Liam Hendriks? So we got in waiver wire wins today. I'm going with Dalton Varsho, a first baseman and a catcher for the Diamondbacks. In 84 at-bats since July 11th, he's hitting, these are his slash numbers, 338, an on-base of 446, and a 738 slugging percentage. That's pretty awesome. 9 home runs, 20 RBIs, and 3 stolen bases. I love a catcher that can steal some bases. He did not make the team out of spring training. Had been up and down for a while since late April, but it looks like he's staying now. And so that's very exciting if you're a Diamondbacks fan, because there hasn't been a whole lot to cheer about, or a guy who wants to fill in that catcher position with a young guy that you could just set it and forget it, hopefully, in that regard. As for guys that were most added, Nicky Lopez, a second baseman with the Royals, and his teammate Greg Holland, a relief pitcher. Louis Bringson, an infielder for the Marlins, and Kenta Maeda, a pitcher who was just injured, were the most dropped, and that would be why Maeda, who I was on the IL, would be one of the more dropped pitchers when it comes to Major League Baseball. So that's baseball, fantasy baseball waiver wire wins. We're going to have some fun with Prospect Peak and rule your league when we come back.
This is Full Count Fantasy Baseball.
All right, you guys, let's listen up. We won a game yesterday. We win one today, that's 2 in a row.
Presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports.
We win one tomorrow, that's called a winning streak. It has happened before.
Get in the game, where you own the game.
So let's see some hustle. Let's jack it up a little. I got a feeling things are about to turn around for us.
Full Count Fantasy Baseball, presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. It is easily the most realistic, most in-depth fantasy platform around. The Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball franchise auctions will take place in November. 30 teams, only 30 teams, and I say only because there will be FOMO. There will be people that will miss out and will have to wait for some of our other leagues or have to buy a franchise later. We will have 26-man rosters. We will have a 40-man list. We will eventually have minor leagues. This is intense. So many great things coming. Keep it locked on www.uffsports.com or follow UFLB_UFF Sports on Twitter for the latest information. If you have any questions, you can email me, Dean_UFLB at UFFsports.com. The main website, www.uffsports.com. So what we're going with our prospect peak, and this one's a little bit different. Usually we're talking about the guys you have to go out and get and try to include in trades. This is a guy who's actually struggling. J.J. Bleday of the Marlins, an outfielder. Numbers are not very exciting. Just a .201 average, 11 home runs, 43 RBIs, 55 walks, and he struck out 87 times. This is in Pensacola AA this season. He was actually dropped off of the 100 Major League top 100 MLB prospects. But the fourth overall pick from 2019 is dropping like a rock in a river. Just the minuscule numbers. Those are not numbers of a guy who hit almost 30 home runs in his last college season. So that is in 409 plate appearances with Pensacola AA this season. So has to turn it around. If you have room, then you can be patient with him. But if somebody's asking about him, might be time to get something for him because not every prospect, as we know, makes it to the show.
Smokey, this is not Nam. This is bowling. There are rules.
I don't think it taints it.
What you talking about, mister?
You're crazy. I like you, but you're crazy.
All right, in Rule Your League, what I try to do is have a rule that your league can implement, and a lot of them are ideas from different people that I've passed on that I would really like. A lot of them are ones that I've used in my own leagues, or I'll give you kind of a rule to live by when it comes to playing fantasy sports. So the rule for your league is if you are in a keeper league, you should have a minor league system. We have a 6-player minor league system in one of our leagues. In the Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball, you have a 40-man list. So that's the 40-man list, rather. So that's the ultimate. We also have a massive scouting program where you're scouting real-world players and then auctioning them to fantasy owners. And you're scouting them 3 years in advance. So you're really trying to get them before anybody else. And that proves just what the top talents are out there. So the rule I would have if I was starting up a fantasy league is make sure you have a minor league system so guys can stockpile. It also gives you more options for trades in your league as well. So just something I would be going with is having a minor league system in your fantasy league. I want to remind you to check out www.uffsports.com to check out all of our action. And check out all of our past shows at UFSN. There is the YouTube channel. Okay, just in time now for Weekend Watch. I'll be checking out the Yankees and the A's. Garrett Cole on the hill Friday night versus Sean Manaea. Both teams are trying to overtake first place in the division leaders, Tampa and Houston. The Yankees right now hold the number 1 wild card spot in the AL. Oakland with a sweep, though, would be tied with the Yankees and ahead of Boston, who right now sits in the 2nd wild card spot, a game and a half back of New York. Scoreboard watching time is here, and it's a lot of fun. Okay, that's going to wrap things up for me on this show. And as you know, this show is presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. There is one more piece of advice that I need to pass on to you.
You be cocky and arrogant, even when you're getting beat.
And that's going to wrap things up for us. Big thanks to you, the viewer, and of course, big thanks to Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports for being the presenting sponsor. The only thing I have left to say, the only thing I have left to do is to tell you to ban the shift. We'll talk next week, everybody.